In this example, we're going to be creating tooltips that animate when the user hovers over the images. So when I hover over the image, this tooltip is going to slide in from the left. When I mouse away, it's going to disappear. And this is going to be flexible in that if we want to increase the amount of text, we can add whatever we want inside the tooltip, and the information is going to be persistent and it will grow. So let's look at how we can create something like this. I'm going to start off with an unordered list that contains list items, and my list items are going to contain images that are links. Alongside of the links are going to be a div with a class of tooltip, and then that currently is just going to contain an h1. And I have two of these for this particular example. What we're going to do to build out the page is we're going to work on the CSS. So currently I just have a rule for the font family. Let's add some additional rules to the other elements. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a rule for my unordered list. And we're just going to zero out the margin and padding and set the position to relative. The next item that we're going to style is going to be the li items. And I don't have any other lists, but I'm going to use my class of image gallery, which is the class name I've assigned to the unordered list, just so I could target just these list items. We're going to go ahead and we're going to set the width of the list items to match the width of our images. Same thing with the height, so I'm going to set the height to be the height of my images. I'm going to use a position of relative, and let's get rid of the bullets. I'm going to use an overflow of hidden, so as I move the tooltip on and off the page, you won't actually see that. And I'm going to add a margin of 20 pixels. So currently our page actually looks like this. This is what it looks like without any styles. And now I'm going to add the styles. And you can see that the bullets disappear along with the tooltip information. So that information no longer is appearing on the page. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to make some styles for the tooltip element. So I have a div with a class of tooltip, and that contains whatever content we want to be in the tooltip. That doesn't really matter too much. So our tooltip item is going to be positioned absolute, and that's so that I can stack it on top of the other elements. I'm going to use a bottom value of 40 pixels so that my tooltip will appear 40 pixels from the bottom of the image, and I'm going to use a left value of 0. I'll set the background color of the tooltips to a white color that has a little bit of opacity, and I'm going to round the corners on two sides, the upper right and the bottom right, and then the rest of the values are going to be 0. We'll add a box shadow. I'll specify a text color, and if we save now and we look in the browser, you can see that this is what this currently looks like. This is a little bit tight to the edge, so I'm going to add some padding as well. And then I'll just add a rule for the tooltip H1, which is what I'm using right now, and I'm going to set the line height to 1. I'm going to set the padding to 5 pixels for the top and the bottom and 30 pixels for the right and the left. If we save and refresh, we should start getting something that looks like this, which is starting to look more like I want it to. So now let's go ahead and let's create some keyframes. So I'm going to create an @keyframes rule, and I'll just call it tooltip, and I'm going to specify the values that I want. So at 0 I'm going to use a transform, and I'll transform the translate X property, and I'm going to set this to -400 pixels to pull the element off of the screen, and then I'll set a rule for what happens at 100%, and at 100% we're going to transform and we'll translate X to have a value of 0. And then to utilize these, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a rule for my .image gallery li:hover, and then I'm going to target the tooltip. So when the li element is hovered over, we're going to have this change affect the tooltip, And we're going to go ahead and we're going to say that we want to do animation, and we'll call our tooltip. We're going to have it happen in 1.5 seconds, and we're going to specify forward so it stays at its forward position. So now when I refresh the page, you can see that the animation is working, but we are getting a weird behavior. When we hover over, it disappears and then it animates on. And the problem is that we don't actually want the tooltip to show until the user hovers over the image. So the tooltip currently should be hidden. And then when they hover over, we want that behavior to happen. So to solve this problem, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and tell the element to not have a display property on the tooltip rule. So I'm going to go into my tooltip rule, and we're going to specify that we want the display to be none. This is going to actually hide these elements from the screen, so they're not going to show. Now when I hover over the picture, they're also not showing. So we're going to add onto the rule that we have for our image gallery li hover tooltip, we're going to add a display of block. Now, when I refresh the page, you can see that the tooltip is not showing. When I hover over, it slides in, and when I hover away, it disappears. So that's the behavior that we want. Now, the final thing that I want to show you is that these are capable of having more than just the H1. So if I come into one of these, and if I add a paragraph, and if we save the page and we refresh, you can see that the top one's going to work as we expect it. The bottom one works, and it slides in, and it's going to show the paragraph and the H1. Now we do have some formatting issues that I want to get rid of, so I don't want this to actually go full width, and I need a little bit of indentation on my paragraph. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and in my CSS I'm going to add a rule for .tooltip p, and we're just going to add some padding. So our padding is going to be 0 for the top, 30 pixels for the right and the left, and 5 pixels for the bottom. And the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the tooltip rule, and I'm going to specify a max width. And by using max width, it will only give the max width up to 75%. So if we save now and we refresh, when I hover over, the behavior works as we would expect it to, and now you can see that the tooltip that has the text and the paragraph looks a little bit better. So in this way, we can add some animation and add these slick little tooltips that are going to appear on hover. So you might find something like this useful for your projects.